first few weeks, everything felt calm. The sound of the wind through the trees, the reflection of the moon on the water, everything seemed perfect. Until one night, Luis came home and saw the back door slightly open. He was sure he had locked it that morning. When they entered, the air felt colder, heavier. That night, as they tried to sleep, Marta heard a whisper. It was so close to her ear, she froze. "Luis, come here." She opened her eyes, but the room was empty. No one there, just the sound of her own heartbeat. Days passed. Luis began to see a shadow by the lake, a human shape, still, watching. When he got closer, it vanished. Marta started noticing reflections in the window, a dark figure moving behind her. But when she turned around, nothing. One night, the old clock in the living room started ticking on its own. The hands began to move backward. Luis stepped closer and a wave of freezing air hit him in the face. At midnight, Marta woke up again. She wasn't alone. Next to her bed stood a figure, tall, completely still, its face covered in shadow. She couldn't scream, couldn't move. The thing leaned closer, as if trying to breathe in her fear. Then, it was gone. At sunrise, they packed everything and left the house. No words, no explanation. They never went back. The house remains empty, but neighbors still say, on quiet nights, you can hear a whisper coming from the lake, soft, slow, calling someone's name. I used to live in a small town outside Zacatecas. Behind my house, across an empty field, there was an old white house that everyone avoided. No one ever saw who lived there, but at night, one single light would turn on in the upstairs window, always at 2:17 a.m. At first, I didn't think much of it, but after a few weeks, I started noticing something strange. Every night the light came on, my dog would start whining and scratching the door, staring toward that window. And every time I looked, I thought I saw someone standing there, perfectly still, just watching. One night I decided to record it. I set my phone by the window facing the house and went to bed. Around 2 a.m. the dog started growling again. When I checked the phone the next morning, the light was on like always. But there was something else. In the reflection of my own window, I could see a figure standing behind me, tall, thin, almost blending with the dark. I thought it was a trick of the light, until I saw fingerprints on the glass on the inside. That same night, I heard knocking on my back door. 3 knocks, slow, careful. When I looked through the glass, no one was there, just the field, silent and empty. But when I turned around, my living room light was on, and someone had written something on the dusty table, just one word, move. I didn't sleep after that. A few days later, I told my neighbor what happened. She went pale and said, that house has been empty for years. The last family who lived there left everything behind, even their car. When I asked why, she said, they said something kept coming to their window at night, from your side of the field. I moved out the following week, but sometimes when I drive past that road at night, the light in the window still turns on at 2:17. And even from the car, I can tell whoever's standing there is still watching my old house. It all started when Anna inherited her grandmother's old house, a quiet home in the countryside. She thought it would be a new beginning, fresh air, silence, memories. The first nights were peaceful, but soon, something changed. basement door was slightly open. She was sure she had locked it before bed. Anna turned on the light. Nothing. Only the dripping sound of water on the cold concrete floor. The next morning, she found a dark stain spreading across the basement floor. It looks like something had been dragged. No animal tracks, no explanation. The sounds grew louder each night, whispers at first, then screams, a woman's cry for help, a man's deep growl. Anna stopped sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw a shadow standing at the end of her bed. One night, she woke up, unable to move. Her chest felt heavy. The light from the hallway slowly faded, and a voice whispered, "Leave." When she finally could move, she ran downstairs, straight into the basement. In the middle of the room was a small old music box. It wasn't playing. She opened it, and inside was a photograph of her grandmother. On the back, written in pencil, were 3 words, "I'm not alone." Anna sold the house 2 months later. No one ever stayed there for long. The neighbors said they saw lights turning on in the basement, even when the place was empty, and sometime, when the wind blows from the woods, you can still hear it. A faint whisper telling you to leave. I used to work night security at a cemetery just outside Querétaro. I took the job because it paid well, and honestly, I didn't believe in any of that ghost stuff. The first few nights were quiet, just the sound of crickets, wind, and the gates creaking from time to time. But after my first week, things changed. Around 2 a.m., I started hearing footsteps on the gravel path near Section 12. At first, I thought it was stray dogs, but then the steps stopped right behind me. When I turned around, no one was there. The air felt heavy, like I was being watched. I tried to ignore it, but every night it got worse. The motion lights would turn on by themselves, one by one, like something was moving through the graves. Once I saw a shadow pass across the gate, tall, thin, but it didn't make a sound. One night the office phone rang around 3 a.m. The call was coming from the old chapel inside the cemetery. That phone hadn't worked in years. When I picked up, all I heard was breathing, slow, raspy, like someone trying to whisper but too close to the receiver. Then a woman's voice said, "Don't lock me in again." The line went dead. The next day I asked my boss about that chapel. He told me they stopped using it after an accident. A woman who cleaned the place had gotten trapped inside when the roof caved in during a storm. She died before they could get to her. They buried her right behind the chapel in Section 12. That night I had to make my rounds again. When I passed the chapel, I saw the door was slightly open. I swear I hadn't touched it. Inside, everything was covered in dust, except one thing, a mop leaning against the wall, perfectly clean. Then I heard it, the sound of water dripping onto the floor, only it wasn't water, it was blood, fresh, still warm, dripping from the ceiling onto my boots. I quit the next morning, but sometimes when I drive past the cemetery, the motion lights still flicker on, like she's waiting for someone to come back and lock the door again. I used to work as a substitute teacher at a small elementary school outside Monterey. It was an old building, chipped walls, broken clocks, and the kind of silence that never felt right. One morning, they asked me to cover for a 3rd grade class in a room at the end of the hallway, room 8. used it. The secretary just said, "We try not to, unless we have to." The moment I walked in, something felt off. The air was colder than the rest of the building, and the kids were too quiet. Not the usual kind of quiet. It was like they were listening to something. Halfway through the lesson, I noticed one girl sitting alone in the back. Her name was Inez. She didn't speak, didn't write. She just stared at the blackboard, even when I wasn't writing anything. During recess, I asked one of the boys who she was. He whispered, "She doesn't go here anymore." I laughed it off until I saw the attendance sheet. There was no Inez listed anywhere. When the bell rang, I turned around to tell the class they could leave, but the chair in the back was empty, still warm. That night, I asked one of the older teachers about room 8. Her face went pale. She told me that 10 years ago, a girl named Inez died there. She stayed behind after class, and no one ever figured out why the door locked from the inside. They found her sitting at her desk the next morning, staring straight at the blackboard with her fingernails torn off, like she'd been scratching something. The next day, I went back to return the class keys, but I stopped at room 8. Inside on the chalkboard, someone had written in perfect handwriting, "Can I go home now, miss?" No one else was in the building, and when I looked down, there were small, dusty handprints all over my desk.
The boy who was never enrolled. They say the most innocent places hide the most terrifying secrets, and if you really think about it, what could be more innocent than a kindergarten? It happened a few years ago in a small town. The teachers thought it was a prank at first, until the cameras showed what no one could explain. Miss Laura had been teaching at Little Steps Kindergarten for 7 years. She loved her job, the laughter, the drawings, the endless noise of children. But at the start of the new school year, something felt wrong. Something she couldn't quite name. Every morning, when she took attendance, a small boy in a blue uniform sat quietly at the very back of the classroom. He never raised his hand, he never played, he just watched. His eyes were strange, like he wasn't really there. When Laura asked his name, he whispered, almost afraid to speak. My mom said I'm not supposed to tell. She smiled, thinking he was shy. But that afternoon, when she checked the enrollment list, his name wasn't there, not anywhere. She asked the children about him. They all said he was their friend. They even drew pictures of him. But in every single drawing, his face was scribbled out with a black crayon. Laura felt uneasy. The next morning, she stood by the door and greeted each child as they arrived. She counted them carefully, one by one. But when she turned to face the class, there he was again, already sitting in the back, smiling. That night, she stayed late and watched the classroom security footage. At first, everything looked normal. Children entered, laughing, dropping their bags, running to their seats. And then, at minute 12, the camera flickered. For half a second, there was static, and when the image cleared, the boy was there, sitting perfectly still in the last chair. The door had never opened. She checked the footage from the previous days. Every time, the same thing. He simply appeared. No entry, no sound, just appeared. The next morning, Laura arrived before everyone else. The classroom was empty, the chairs perfectly lined up, but on the last desk lay a piece of paper. It was a child's drawing, a group of happy kids holding hands, and one figure drawn in the corner, all black, no face, no eyes, Just a dark outline and a sentence written in uneven letters. I want to be on the list too. That was the last day Miss Laura ever taught there. Weeks later, the parents started noticing something strange in their children's drawings. The same black figure kept appearing in the corner of every page, sometimes standing behind them, sometimes holding their hands, always faceless, always watching. No one could explain it. No one remembered seeing a boy in a blue uniform, but when the school tried to find the previous construction records, they discovered something buried. Before the kindergarten, the building had been a small daycare. It had burned down decades ago. 3 children never made it out, and one of them had never been officially registered. Now, every new teacher who enters that classroom swears they feel someone sitting behind them when they stay after hours. A faint sound of breathing, a chair creaking softly in the dark, and sometimes, when they turn off the lights and glance at the window's reflection, they see a small figure in a blue uniform, smiling from the last row, waiting to be called. If you like it, I invite you to leave me a like and subscribe. Story number 2. The Sleep Room. The kindergarten was called Bright Horizons, but everyone in town remembered it by another name. The Sleep Room. It was supposed to be a safe place, just a small nap room for toddlers, painted with clouds and cartoon suns. But something about that room felt wrong. Even the light never seemed to reach it properly. It was always a little too cold, a little too quiet. Miss Evelyn was new. She had replaced a teacher who quit suddenly, without giving any explanation. On her first day, the children told her something strange. They said they didn't like nap time anymore. When she asked why, one little girl whispered, "Because the lady in the ceiling watches us." Evelyn laughed, thinking it was a child's imagination, until nap time came. As she tucked them in, one by one, she noticed all the kids were facing the same direction, toward the far wall. None of them wanted the last mat near the corner. That spot stayed empty every day. After the lights were dimmed, she sat at her desk, scrolling on her phone until she heard it. A small, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails brushing wood. She looked up. Nothing. The sound stopped, then came again, a little louder, directly above her. She stepped onto a chair and aimed her flashlight at the ceiling tiles. One of them had scratches on it. Tiny, uneven scratches, like someone had been digging at it from the inside. The next day, she mentioned it to the janitor. He froze, then said quietly, "Don't open that one. It's sealed for a reason," and he walked away. That night, Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about it. She went back to the room after hours, alone, the building empty. The hallways smelled of old crayons and bleach. When she reached the nap room, she turned on her flashlight and noticed something. All the sleeping mats had been moved into a perfect circle. In the center, on the floor, were small handprints made of chalk dust, child-sized, and one larger. She told herself it was a prank, but as she turned to leave, the lights flickered, and from above, she heard it again, that same tapping, faster this time. Then a voice, soft, almost kind. "I used to help them sleep." The tile above her shifted, just slightly. A thin hand, gray, trembling, reached through the gap and dragged its nails along the edge. Evelyn froze. The whisper came again, closer. "They never wake up crying anymore." She ran. No one saw her again after that night. The next morning, the children were found waiting outside the nap room. calm, smiling. All their little mats were gone. The floor was bare, except for one new thing: a drawing, crayons pressed deep into the paper, a circle of children all asleep, and a tall woman standing above them with hollow eyes and no mouth. At the bottom, written in red, "Thank you for keeping us quiet." Weeks later, the janitor quit too. He told the principal the ceiling tile had fallen during cleaning. Behind it, they found a small wooden cradle wedged in the beams, rocking ever so slightly, as if something invisible still slept inside. No one enters the sleep room anymore, but at night, when the wind moves through the halls, teachers swear they can hear the faint sound of humming, a lullaby, soft and broken, echoing from the ceiling. And sometimes, if you stay long enough, you can still hear the tapping, like fingernails brushing the wood.
It started 3 weeks ago. I woke up one night and my phone camera was on, recording. The video showed me sleeping peacefully, except I don't remember turning it on, and the angle wasn't from my nightstand. It was from above me, like someone was holding the phone. I tried to convince myself it was just a glitch, or maybe a prank, but the next night, it happened again. A new video appeared at 3:14 a.m. This time, the camera slowly zoomed in on my face. You could see my eyes twitching under my lids. Then a whisper, a man's voice, soft, calm. He said, "Almost awake." I threw up after hearing it. I live alone. No one has my keys. I changed my locks. I even covered my phone camera with tape. For a few nights, nothing happened. Then, last Friday, I woke up to the sound of breathing, not mine, heavy, right next to my ear. When I opened my eyes, the room was pitch black, but I could feel someone there, standing over me. I turned on the light. No one, just my phone. Lying on the floor, the camera app was open, and in the corner of the screen there was a reflection of me, as if I was still lying down, eyes closed. I checked my gallery again. There was a new folder, hidden inside, dozens of videos, each one from different nights, each one showing me sleeping, but the angle changes, sometimes from the doorway, sometimes from right above my face, sometimes from under the bed. I called the police. They didn't find any signs of forced entry, but one officer looked pale after checking my phone. He asked me quietly, "When did you last sleep?" I told him, "Last night." He just stared at me and said, "Then who's the person sleeping in these videos?" "Tonight." Because the last file was timestamped 20 minutes ago, and it shows me still asleep, still breathing, while I'm standing right here, watching. Last winter, I moved into an old row house on a street that felt like it had been forgotten. Small rooms, thin walls, a single light bulb in the living room that never quite warmed the place. The first nights were quiet. Then, around 2 weeks in, I woke to a sound I couldn't place. A soft scraping, like a fingernail tracing plaster, coming from inside the wall next to my bed. I pressed my ear to it, because that's the stupid thing you do when you're alone, and your brain won't let you sleep. Beneath the scraping there were whispers, not words at first, just a pattern, like someone rehearsing sentences in the dark. The next morning I found a pencil rubbing tucked into the seam of my baseboard. Small, careful letters. It said, "Do you remember? I live alone. I don't own a pencil like that." Days later, I woke with a smell in the room. Old perfume, powdery, the kind that belongs to photographs. And on my dresser, a single photograph had appeared face down. When I flipped it, it was me, smiling at a party I couldn't missing, an hour misplaced, then whole evenings vanished. One night, exhausted, I taped my phone to the headboard and left it recording. At 3:03 a.m. the file shows me asleep. At 3:27 a.m. there's a figure in the doorway, a shadow at first, then leaning closer as if reading my notebook, flipping pages with invisible fingers. It doesn't touch me, it doesn't need to. It watches and the room fills with the sound of my own voice, soft, reading aloud lines I'd never written. When I woke, the notebook was open on my lap. The pages were full. Every forgotten hour, every missing party, every smile I couldn't place, written in my handwriting, and at the bottom of the last page a line I did not write. It said, "Thank you for remembering me." I moved out the next day. I took everything, furniture, clothes, the radiator, but I left the notebook behind. Some part of me wanted it to stay, to be the thing that kept whatever had been living in that wall anchored, contained. Tonight I checked the photos on my phone. There's a single new image, taken from inside the house I left, a page of a notebook, photographed close up, my handwriting across it, clear as if I wrote it yesterday. It says, "Did you remember to lock the door?" And now, sometimes I wake at night and hear, faintly, the sound of pages turning, like someone hoping I will forget again. In the heart of Chihuahua, Mexico, there's a bridal shop that has been open for nearly a century. Its window display has always drawn attention, not because of the dresses, but because of her. They call her La Pascualita, a mannequin dressed in white, standing perfectly still, watching the street with eyes that seem far too real. She appeared in the shop window in 1930. The owner, a woman named Pascuala Esparza, introduced her as the new model for her wedding gowns. But almost immediately people began whispering. The mannequin's skin looked too human, the veins too faintly blue beneath the surface. Her hands had fingerprints, her nails looked freshly manicured, and her glassy eyes seemed to follow you when you walked by. One night, a worker stayed late sewing a dress. She swore she saw the mannequin's expression change. The next morning she quit, said the figure had smiled at her. Then the rumors began, that La Pascualita wasn't a mannequin at all, that she was Pascuala's own daughter, preserved after dying tragically on her wedding day. The story said the bride had been bitten by a black widow spider just hours before her ceremony. She collapsed in her gown, and Pascuala, unable to face the loss, had her body embalmed. Then she placed her in the window, so her beauty would never fade. Of course, no one could prove it, but strange things kept happening. Every night employees covered her with a cloth, and every morning they found her positioned differently. One time, her eyes seemed red, as if she'd been crying. Another morning, her veil was missing, found later on the floor near the door. People came from all over Mexico to see her. Some left flowers, others prayed. A few swore that at dusk, when the light hits her face just right, she blinks. The legend says her spirit never left the shop, that she still waits for the wedding that never happened. Today, La Pascualita still stands there, behind the glass. Her dress changes every season, but her face never does. If you walk past at night, you can see your reflection beside hers, and sometimes, if you look long enough, you'll notice she's not looking back at you anymore, because she's already watching something behind you. I've been a truck driver for 17 years, and I've seen some strange things on the road, but nothing like what happened last month on Highway 59. It was around 2 a.m. Fog thick as smoke, just me, my rig, and miles of empty asphalt. I'd been driving straight for 10 hours hours and was fighting to keep my eyes open when I saw her. A woman standing on the shoulder of the road, waving. She looked lost, pale, wearing an old denim jacket and no shoes. I slowed down, rolled the window down, and asked if she needed help. She didn't say a word, just pointed to the passenger seat. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. She climbed in, hands shaking, staring straight ahead. We drove in silence for about 10 minutes before I noticed something. The inside of the cab felt colder. She was whispering something under her breath. I asked again if she was okay. She turned her head slowly and said, "You picked me up here before." I told her that was impossible. I'd never been on that route in my life. But she smiled just slightly and whispered, "You said that last time too." The next thing I remember is waking up at dawn, parked on the same stretch of road where I first saw her. The passenger seat was empty, but there were muddy footprints, bare feet on the dashboard pointing toward me. Now, every time I drive past mile marker 212, my radio cuts out, my engine stutters, and I swear I can hear a woman whisper from the back of the cab, "Are you going to leave me again?" I've been a trucker for over 20 years. You learn to live with the loneliness, the long drives, the static on the radio, the endless roads. But 3 nights ago, I heard something on my CB radio that still keeps me awake. It was around 3 a.m., middle of nowhere, somewhere between Amarillo and Wichita Falls. I had channel 19 on, listening to random chatter when a voice came through. A woman's voice, soft but trembling. She said, "Can anyone hear me? Please help me." I grabbed the mic and asked where she was. Static. Then she whispered, "I'm on the road. I can't get out of the truck." I thought it was some prank, but then she said my name, my full name, the one only my mother used. I froze. I hadn't said my name once on that channel. I asked who she was. She didn't answer, just started crying. Loud, ragged sobs, then silence. A minute later, I passed a wreck on the side of the highway, an overturned 18-wheeler. The cab was burned out, still smoking. I slowed down. It had my company's logo on it, my exact route number printed on the door. I radioed dispatch to report it, but they said all trucks were accounted for, including mine. I looked again at the wreck, and the license plate was the same as mine. Then the CB crackled. The woman's voice came back, closer this time, whispering, "You didn't get out last time, remember?" I threw the mic to the floor, looked in the mirror. For a second, I swear I saw her sitting in the sleeper behind me, charred face, staring, smiling. Now every night I drive that stretch, channel 19 turns on by itself, and she whispers, "You're still burning, John. You just haven't noticed yet."